We are on Genesis chapter 38, and I can tell you that we're going to discuss a subject this evening that we won't get very far. I know that's never happened before.
Not here.
No. All right. Now, chapter 38 is almost kind of a parenthetic story in the ongoing saga of Jacob's family. We left off in chapter 37 with Joseph being sold into slavery and Jacob being convinced that he was dead. And then chapter 38 just totally switches gears and starts talking about a completely different story. But there's a reason the details of chapter 38 are here. It tells us that even in the Messianic line, which was Judah, that not everything was perfect. There's a few black sheep in the Messianic line, and Judah himself is one of them. All right, chapter 38, verse 1 says, "And it came about at that time that Judah departed from his brothers and visited a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira." Or I think a couple of versions have it listed as Hiram with an M. Now, this is not a woman. The Adullamite, this is talking about a man, just some friend of Judah's. "And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her and went into her." And again, Shua is not the woman's name, it's the Canaanite man's name. The woman that it's referring to is the daughter of Shua. And that's an important point to keep in mind as we get later on into the chapter, because otherwise it becomes confusing if you think that Shua is the woman. "So she conceived and bore a son, and he named him Then she conceived again and bore a son, and named him Onan. And she bore still another son, and named him Shelah." Or some folks might pronounce that Sheila, but that's not really, it's Shelah. "And it was at Kesem that she bore him." So what you have here is Judah. Notice it doesn't say anything at all about him marrying this woman. He just simply took up with the Canaanite woman.
My version said
Mine
married.
says married.
Mine
Married and went into her.
Yeah.
Where does it say? What does it actually say, literally?
Verse 2, "And he married her and went into her."
Well, in the original Hebrew, it says he took her. Now that could be translated as he married her. So I'm not going to say with all certainty that he didn't marry her, but it doesn't actually say in the original Hebrew when the phrase "and he took her." When you see in your English translation that he married her, that's a translator's interpretation. All I'm saying here is he might have married her and he might not have. All we know for sure, based on the original Hebrew, is he took up with her. What's that?
3 boys.
Yeah, 3 boys. He took up with her long enough to have 3 sons with her. Now, is it probable that he married her? More than likely. All I'm saying is we can't prove it from the context of the original Hebrew. Where you're probably, I guess, reading from a King James, it says he married her.
New King
That's
New
just,
King
what's
James.
that?
New King James.
Again, based on the same
Translation.
Masoretic text. That's a translator's interpretation.
Prior to this, Judah's older brothers removed themselves from the Messianic line through their actions.
Yes. Reuben, because
Shouldn't this have also removed Judah from the Messianic line for his actions? Or is this just proving to us that none of us are worthy?
I think, it proves us that nobody deserved what God decided on. But you'll notice that if he took up with the Canaanite woman, whether he married her or not, is really irrelevant for this. It wasn't something that Jacob disinherited him over. Reuben got disinherited because he slept with his stepmother.
Yeah.
Simeon and Levi got disinherited because they slaughtered the inhabitants of an entire town and forced Jacob and his family to have to move. Judah apparently did this on his own, had no bearing on Jacob, and Jacob apparently didn't care. Now, that doesn't mean that it was not an important issue, but apparently it didn't offend Jacob.
And it didn't offend God enough for him to remove Judah from the Messianic line.
I wouldn't say it didn't offend God, but then again, God chooses who God wants to choose, whether it offends him or not. All right, so what we have here is 3 sons. Whether he married or not doesn't matter for this story. I suspect when it says, and he took her, and again, this is my interpretation. What I would wonder maybe is if he just went into a Canaanite woman, and then when she got pregnant, then maybe married her later. I don't know.
Yeah, but they took up together and had a life together long enough to produce 3 children.
3 kids, yes.
And raised them.
So, but now we get to the important part, verse 6. He's got 3 kids. It says, now Judah took a wife for Er, his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. Now notice, what's that?
No, just Tamar.
By the way, not the same Tamar that was King David's daughter. The same name, but not different woman. We're talking, 1,000 years difference in history, unless Tamar lived a really long time.
I'm just thinking where this is going with Judah. That's
No,
all.
but I just say that because if you read that, it's like, wait a minute, that name sounds familiar. It should sound familiar because one of David's daughters' name was Tamar, but obviously not the same Tamar. Now, what else this tells us is Abraham apparently chose his own wife, Sarai. But with Isaac, it was an arranged marriage. Then with Jacob got tricked, but essentially Jacob picked his own wife. Then with Esau picked his own wife, picked somebody that Isaac didn't care for, but he did anyway. But now we see in the next generation, we're back to arranged marriages. You notice it seems like it's every other generation you have a marriage that is of their choice. Next generation, it's an arranged marriage. Generation back after that, it's choice. Then it's arranged marriage. Just seems to be going every other one. But in any event, an arranged marriage was not at all uncommon this time. And so what we see here is that Judah picked a wife for his firstborn son. And that was Tamar with Er. By the way, notice that with the other 2, Onan, and then the last one, Shelah, we don't have a clue what the difference in ages of any of these are. So we don't know, how old they were or how much younger the second and third born were.
Shelah wasn't old enough to marry yet.
Now that much we do know. Verse 7 says, Judah's firstborn, was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord took his life. Now, at this point, God specifically intervened. Why do you think that happened?
He's controlling the messianic line.
There you go.
So he doesn't mess it up worse.
Because even though Judah was not perfect, God already knew who the messianic line would go through. And because Judah was not perfect by any means, but he wasn't what the Bible would refer to as just plain evil. Apparently was. And God was not going to have him in the messianic line. So God took his life. Now, that brings up another theological point here. Anybody know what it is? I got one shaking her head, but
Why don't you share with us?
Just Lord killing people like that, or just?
that's the issue. Who does life belong to?
Lord God Almighty.
God. And God does not owe us life. God is the owner and author of life, and God can give and take life at his pleasure. Whether we like it or not, and we might want to point the finger at God and say, well, that's not fair, but God, well, look at it from this perspective. Would we be alive if not for God? God is the owner of our existence and our lives. So for God to take a life is not at all, for us to take a life, depending on the circumstances, could be considered murder. When God takes a life, it's not murder because the life belongs to God to begin with. All right. So the Lord took his life. Verse 8 says, Then Judah said to Onan, Go into your brother's wife and perform your duty as a brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother. We're going to stop right there. That may be as far as we get. This is a concept that is called Leviratic marriage. Now, not Levitical marriage. Don't confuse the two. Leviratic. And it has nothing to do with the Levites or the law of Moses. At least not at this point. Because at this point in history, was there a law of Moses?
Nope.
Not yet. And frankly, nobody knows where this concept of Leviratic marriage even came from. It clearly was a custom that had developed at this point, but archaeologists, commentators, biblical historians, they just plain don't know where this idea came from. But in essence, it was this. If a man was married to somebody and he died without an heir, it was the next brother's responsibility to marry his now former sister-in-law and father a child for her.
Thank you for not dying.
But there was some conditions on it, and your brother-in-law didn't meet the conditions.
Oh, okay.
Now,
Uh-oh.
here were the conditions. I see that hand.
In Deuteronomy, that's one of the commands that Moses put forth.
Yes, it's in chapter 25, and we're going to discuss that.
Good thinking. I'm glad.
But at this point in history, did Deuteronomy chapter 25 exist? No, it didn't.
In somebody's heart.
It seems to me to be a natural consequence that would develop out of the tribal and clannish behavior of early humans.
Oh,
Maybe.
yeah.
But
Survival.
let me throw in the caveats to it. First of all, it was normally an unmarried brother. So for example, if my wife over there is making a comment that she's glad that I didn't die. But see, my brother would, if I had died without a son, my brother would not have qualified because he was already married. Now, that actually, which I'm not going to read it yet because we may not have time. We may have to pick this up on Wednesday. It was later codified in the law of Moses, and yes, it's in Deuteronomy chapter 25. And it actually states in chapter 25 that if two brothers are living together and one dies without a son, then the next brother is required to marry his former sister-in-law. But when it says two brothers are living together, what does that imply?
They're in the same locale.
Not just in the same locale, because
Sharing a home.
sharing a home, keep going.
Well, in
What's
those
the next?
days, they used to just add on the house for the next family. So
Well, the issue is if you've got a large, rich, extended family that all live together, that might constitute, being in one household. But in most cases, if you've got a brother still living at home, what does that usually entail?
Oh, he's not married.
He's not married yet. He still lives, as we would say in our culture, he lives at home. So once he gets married, what does the Bible actually say about a man that takes a wife?
Leave your mother and father.
Leave your mother and father. So if he's living with his brothers, he's still living at home, which means he's not married. Now, there were other exceptions to that are actually not in the Bible as far as the command, but we do know of examples where Leviratic marriage occurred, even though the next of kin may have been married. The reason for that is because, well, what did Jesus say about the fact that people under Moses had multiple wives?
God didn't care for it, but He allowed it.
He allowed it because of the hardness of their heart, but it was not God's intention. But based on the fact that multiple marriages were still the practice, what is the most, and yes, you probably know, many of you know this off the top of your head, and the ones that don't think about it will go, oh, I knew that. What's the most famous example of Leviratic marriage in the Bible?
Ruth and Boaz.
Ruth and Boaz.
But that was kinsmen redeemers at the same thing.
Same thing. And that's why, notice that Boaz told Ruth, there's somebody who is closer related to you than I am. He gets right of first refusal. Because the issue that's codified in Deuteronomy 25 is the brother. But the practice in their culture was not just, it extended beyond the brother, that if there wasn't a brother, or if the brother said, no, I refuse to, well, then it might go to whoever's the next in line. A cousin, a brother, a grandson, if there is one from another, brother somewhere. Well, in this case, Boaz was not Naomi's, not Naomi, but
Ruth.
no, not Ruth. Ruth's former husband, was it Mahlon, I think. Not his brother, but was apparently a close relative, but not as close as the other. That's why Boaz told her, there's somebody who's a closer relative than I am. I got to go talk to him first. And if he says, no, I'm not interested, then the law will allow me to marry you. Now,
Where does the term Leviratic come from? It has nothing to do with Levi.
well, that's a really good question. Again, we don't know where the origins of this custom came from, or what it's
Or the
called,
origin of the term.
or the origins of the term.
Okay.
But yes, it has nothing to do with Levi. But we'll finish it up with this. I'll read couple other verses here. And yes, this tells you that there's some interesting stuff here. Judah said to Onan, who of course was the second brother, and we know for a fact at this point Onan was not married. Go into your brother's wife and perform your duty as a brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother. Now, if he had done so, the firstborn son would by law actually be the heir apparent of the first brother. Heir would not be, even though as far as the heredity, would be his son, but it would not be his legal son. It would be his nephew.
He's having a substitute.
Yeah. Verse 9 says, and Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. That's what that's talking about. He knew that if he had a child, it wouldn't be legally his kid. Even though he fathered it, it would belong to his brother. He just didn't want to do that. So it came about that he went into his brother's wife, wasted his seed on the ground. In other words, he didn't complete the act. Let's face it, that's what it says. In order not to give offspring to his brother. But what he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord, so he took his life also. All right, we're going to stop there.
So the messianic line comes through the third son? Or is there another yet to come?
There's more to come.
Okay.
That's
You're
not
gonna
done.
You're going to have to wait.
Gets real good.
Same bat time, same bat channel on Wednesday. All right. So that's as far as we're going to get tonight. But the bottom line is, Onan didn't want to do what was required of him. Now notice it says that God was displeased with what he did. God took his life. So the concept of Leviratic marriage was apparently something that even God, was promoting here. Because at this point, God is interested in preserving one thing, the Messianic line.
You'd think they'd have figured it out when the second one croaked, that this is serious.
Well, that's why we will see that Judah had other ideas about that on Wednesday night.
Gonna have a complex.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Questions? All right. We'll pick up there with verse 11 on Wednesday. Mario.
Okay, page 1.